Hi, I'm Grace Dawes. I'm here at Move 2025 and I'm joined by Celina Mikolajczak, the Chief Battery Technology Officer at Lyten. Thank you so much for joining me today, Celina. How's your Move experience been so far?
It's been awesome. It's a lovely show, a lot of nice diversity, some interesting topics.
Amazing.
Big time.
Good, I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah.
So tell me a bit about your career. So you spanned across companies like Tesla, Panasonic, Uber. How has that experience that you learned from all those companies and more, how has that shaped your approach at Lyten?
Oh man, yeah, I've had a misspent youth. A lot of experience there. And I've been doing batteries about 25 years and gotten now experience in kind of all aspects of this. Everything, Tesla was really about the application.
Yeah.
What really you need to go into an electric vehicle, how you manage batteries, how you handle them on the production line. It tells you a lot about what your final product has to be, right? And then, and also at Tesla, we helped develop a lot of the cells. We did a lot of work with Panasonic to make actual, the new form, the 2170 form factor was Tesla that really just developed that, and what it took to develop that. And then, what made the cell really work for a car, right? And, everyone thinks about energy density and cycle life, but there's a lot more to it that makes the cell really good or not good for a car. So, learned a lot about that. And then I went to Uber and I ran my first battery pack design team, right? Which was, interesting. And suddenly I was a director for batteries there. So, the design team, I had to put that together and they reported to me and work with them, learn about pack design. You think until you actually have to do it. And then you really learn. I also learned, how to manage the contracts, and really, look at the whole performance of the entire pack and really run a full battery pack team, right? And then, Uber exited hardware, and so I said, okay, I'm a hardware girl. Like that's what I do, right? So I went to Panasonic and ran engineering at the Gigafactory in Reno, and I ended up running engineering there during COVID.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which was a really interesting experience because, up until that time, Panasonic had lots and lots of advisors from Japan in the Gigafactory working side by side with the American staff, right? Learning how to do cell making. And then when COVID happened, most of them went home. So it was suddenly, the Americans and, it's like being a teenager and your parents hand you the keys to the Ferrari and they're like, don't crash it. Right? And I think
it's a good analogy as well for the event.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So, suddenly there we were, we're running the factory ourselves with very limited advice. And we did it, and we were successful in ramping the factory back up, converting lines. It was not simple. And I think a lot of people feel like, oh, cell making, how hard can it be? We do manufacturing all the time. We should be able to make cells. The cells are very different compared to most other manufacturing because cells, the speeds at which you have to work, the takt times are so small. You're working in fractions of seconds on cells, but the tolerances are also really, really tight.
Yeah.
So micron tolerances, fractional second takt times, you can make a lot of scrap very quickly, a lot of scrap. And, getting that to all run, it's like conducting a major symphony, right? I mean, all the different parts, everything has to be coordinated, everything has to run. People, I think, don't realize that. And they're, try cell making and they discover it's much harder than they anticipated. But, I learned how to do cell making and, what it takes to run that factory. Went back to the Bay Area, worked some at QuantumScape and, tried solid state. Got recruited by Lyten 3 years ago. So, I come to Lyten, it's this new chemistry. So I realized I'm trying to do the two hardest things in the cell world. One, ramp a new chemistry. And basically, if you look at it, people ramp a new chemistry about once a generation, right? We're ramping a new chemistry and then becoming a cell maker, which is the second hardest thing. The experiences have said, okay, it's possible to do. It requires a certain amount of commitment and just persistence. And that's something, I learned from Tesla too, right? at Tesla, we were there, trying to make a car when everyone said you couldn't become an automaker in the United States.
Yeah.
Right. And Tesla became an automaker in the United States. So, people say, well, cell making, it's really hard. Are you really going to be able to do it in the US? And I'm like, yes, we will. But it will take that commitment, that it's, persistence to do it. That's what it feels like. So, so when it's like difficult, I'm like, okay, it's really hard. But I go back to experience at Tesla, or I go back to experience at Panasonic, and I say, yeah, that's what it should feel like. Right? We're not, in some impossible range where it's hard.
Yeah.
And so just keep going and keep working it. You will get there.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Well, cell making doesn't sound like an easy job to me, to be honest.
A lot of people are like, oh, how hard could it be? It's like, oh yeah, try it for a while.
I also just wanted to ask you how you think lithium sulfur batteries will affect the future of electric vehicles, perhaps in terms of range and charging costs, sustainability.
Yeah, so, people are always looking at how do you bring the price of the battery down, right? How do you make an electric car for every person, right? Because, you can make very nice premium vehicles right now. I mean, I have a Model S, it's fantastic, right? But, when I was a grad student or when I got my first job, I was not in the market for a Model S. I was looking for cheap, right?
Yes.
I needed my first car. How do you make that electric, right? So you really can't do it with the high performance chemistries right now. So, you look at like people are trying to project what's the battery price going to be in the future. How do you get there? You don't get there without sulfur, without lithium sulfur. That's where you get to like NMC, NCA performance levels at a price that you get at LFP, right? That's how you get to the mass market car for everyone. And LFP doesn't really do it because the range is just not there. I mean, it's okay. You could do some things, but it's not great, right? You want great, you have to go to sulfur. So what does this do? Sulfur, because price is going to be low, the sulfur is super abundant. You don't have to strip mine a bunch of mountains to get these materials. This is how you electrify everything. And until then, you're going to be really, trying to edge in from the, high performance models, but you're never going to have that solution for the bulk of the fleet, right? And that's what sulfur lets you do. So it's a wickedly hard chemistry to work with. A lot of people have spent time and, given up and, whatever. We're persistent about this because the upside is so big.
Yes.
And it moves the needle so much.
Yes. Amazing. Well, that's fantastic to hear. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat to me today. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your time at Move.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Pleasure.